So good morning. Today is the 13th day of Tevet, and I think it's 25th of December. Anyway, so we were talking about the development of language and the fact that there's no grammar of Hebrew preceding the time of the Bible, and from the time of the Bible either. We don't have a good grammar. We don't see attempts at grammar. The only thing we see is, first of all, that we have an acrostic in Psalms 25. We can date that to King David. So we're talking about 9th, 10th century BC. There was an understanding that there is an order to the letters. Then we don't have an order to two letters together. That we don't find. But then Ezekiel has a vision of the chariot. And like I said just a minute ago, that Ezekiel was definitely smarter than me. He wasn't dumber than I am. And I know that I cannot describe God. So even if Ezekiel had some great vision, whatever, he's not describing God. What he is doing, apparently, is, and this is the way that most of the Kabbalists interpreted this, he's giving us a grammar of language. And to give a grammar, first of all, especially back then, you wouldn't find the text that would go through the verbs and say, this is how they're conjugated, these are the binyanim, the mishkalim. You wouldn't get something like that. That is too... it wouldn't be put in the book of prophecy anyway. Even if there was something like that, it would never be included in the book of prophecy. Book of prophecy is meant to give you inspiration in some ways. It's meant to do something more than that, to reach the soul. So what he did was, what we understand is that he sees three levels of angels, and what he means is that these three levels of angels, they correspond to the three letters that make up every verb in Hebrew. So they had a theory of three-letter verbs. Now this is almost certain because, first of all, because that's how most of the Kabbalists understand it, that and there's books built on it to explain. And merkava literally means permutation, or putting things together. L'arkiv, like a puzzle, that you put things together. So merkava, to say that God is riding on this chariot, it doesn't mean God as he sees a figure of a man. And a figure of a man, what does he mean? He means that man rides on his language. So that's where all inspiration, where all understanding of God comes from. We don't have understanding of God without language. We have idolatry without language. Idolatry is like a state in which language doesn't play the role it should. Language is only used maybe for some simple interactions, but it's not used to contemplate, which is the real purpose of language. And that's why in Chasidut later you find the very important deciphering of the image of riding on horses, which appears in all the Zechariah, when he sees the chariot, he doesn't see these angels, he sees horses, white horses and red horses. And so the deciphering that image is that horses are what lead your thought, meaning language is the letters that can carry you from one place to another in your contemplation. You can't do it without language. If you try to do it only in images, that's idolatry. And that's exactly what the Torah is telling us in the beginning of the Ten Commandments, that you haven't seen a vision. Don't imagine what God is in the sense of thinking of pictures. Rather, you have to abstract. And to abstract, you have to come into language. Once you come into language, then you can begin to think properly. And even then, there's pitfalls. There's all kinds of mistakes you can make. So, in the time of the Bible, it seems, to me at least, I haven't seen anybody write about this, unfortunately, but I'm sure people have. I just haven't found it. In the time of the Bible, it seems to me that the grammar that they were building, that they were trying to extract from the language, from the spoken language, was a grammar that was based on three-letter verbs. And that's from Ezekiel, and he's the main source. But then, in the Second Temple period, that fell out of favor for some reason. And they began developing a two-letter root system that we call, instead of calling them roots, we call them sharim, or gates. So there's 231 gates. And that seems to be very clear because, for instance, we take Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, which is a 2nd century compilation. The wisdom in it is considered to have come from Abraham, and it's easy to show that it's true, that the wisdom there is very ancient. But the compilation, the way it was put together, was in the 2nd century. It's attributed usually to Rabbi Akiva's Academy. And there they clearly use a two-letter grammar, a two-letter source for words. And the sages, and the whole time of the sages, until about the 11th century, that was the grammar that people used. And that's the way Rashi thinks about, the Rashi only knew that system. And the Talmud, you can't understand the Talmud without the two-letter system. You can't understand what in the world they're doing, how they're analyzing things. And then in the 11th century, for some reason, the three-letter system made a huge comeback. And from then on, almost everybody only knows the three-letter root grammar of Hebrew. So, it's 3 to 2 to 3. I mean, think about it a lot, why this happened, why the transition, why they gave up. I mean, the simple reason they gave up on it, because it could be that they felt that it was Ezekiel's whole grammar was too difficult for them, having no prophecy. They couldn't further develop it. Maybe they didn't know exactly what to do with it. I'm guessing. I don't know if there's a better reason for that. And it also could be that Sefer Yetzirah had more and more of an important impact, and they were trying to re-establish the ancient thought of Abraham, maybe, and do these two-letter roots instead, gates. So now you come to a modern Hebrew speaker, and if they've heard of any grammar, most people unfortunately don't know grammar. But if they've heard any kind of grammar, it'll be the grammar they studied in school, and exclusively the three-letter system. Is so exclusively that most people have no clue that when you study Talmud and when you study most of the early commentaries, you have to know the two-letter system. And to study Kabbalah for sure you have to know, because a lot of Kabbalah builds on the two-letter system, because it's a rabbinical work in the end. So anything that's rabbinical is going to use the two-letter system, which was used in the time of the Mishnah of the Talmud. So when Samson Raphael Hirsch says "lichbosh" means to conquer, and
I said that, but it's I derived it from
right.
Yeah.
The problem is, of course, that lichbosh to conquer is with a kaf.
Yeah, there's a change of consonants.
And the chavosh et chamoro to saddle his donkey is with chit. So somebody who's European, is very surprising he would do something like this, because he was more learned than that. Somebody who's European will tell you the chet and chaf are the same. But somebody who's Oriental, comes from Arab-speaking lands, and so they're completely different.
Yeah.
Completely different. I mean, you can't even mix them. They're in two different groupings of phonetics. So to say this is like that is almost...
Ayin and Aleph, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, Ayin and Aleph are from the same grouping. There are Aleph, Chet, Hey, Ayin, which are the guttural letters.
Yeah, right.
But the Chaf is not. Chaf is not from a guttural letter.
Yeah, you're right.
In any case, so you have to watch him also. I don't know if that's what he meant. Okay.
And again, don't go by my...
So I'm saying that for him to explain something, it could be that the reason he's explaining it is because maybe he does have a very deep reason there why...
He didn't do that. That was my extrapolation.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll bring to show you that statement that goes through his whole... That explains his system with consonant changes and, how things go from light to heavy as far as meaning and...
So where are we? I don't remember. What page is this? Anyway, so we were talking about what happened to cause and effect. We want to extrapolate today. We want to abstract the whole concept here. That was talking about that the causes have fallen down into material causes. It's not material causes like Aristotle. It's just a material cause. So for God to speak to me, He's speaking to me through the language of my livelihood. That's how He's speaking to me. What does it mean? Again, if I think that God is speaking to me, meaning the purpose of my life is to make more money, so I didn't get the message. I only got the cause. I didn't understand the effect. I missed the whole point. But if I understand properly that God is speaking to me through the language of my needing to make a livelihood, but the real goal, the real effect that I would like to bring about is the study of Torah, is the increasing of morality, of so on. So I have to learn the language. I just have to learn. I have to be sensitive to the language. I have to understand that, and then in a lot of Hasidic writings, you'll get a lot of interpretations of what do different circumstances in life mean. What is it? How do you know how much you should be spending on let's say clothing, right? How much do you? Well, the whole question of how much should I give to charity as opposed to how much do I keep? These become real questions of trying to interpret the message that God is giving me through these reasons. But again, the whole point is that in the time of the temple, God didn't need to speak to me through the language of livelihood, through the language of my possessions. He rather spoke to me more directly. There was a more direct message involved. Okay, so that was why Reb Mendel said that I only go to speak in a place where they give me money, because that way I know that God wants me to go there. But then he says, but don't make the cause here into the major thing, because it's not about the cause. Because the point is not to get the money. The point was, again, there you're missing the point. You're just getting the language, you're not getting the message. The message really is that you should be teaching. So he says, if they don't pay you, they don't pay you. Fine. It's not. You don't have to hold it against them. And you don't have to come and say there was no purpose in what I did. Because really this was not the goal of telling you to go to a certain place. The only purpose was really to teach, and that is called the chicks and the eggs. That's what it means to take the chicks and the eggs. Not the money that I get, that's just a vehicle, that's just an instrument to point me in the right direction. The real point was in the end to teach. But if there's no cause, there's no visible cause, they're not coming beforehand and telling me, come and teach, we'll pay you, we'll take care of what you need for this, whatever, there's no visible cause. He shouldn't get up by himself and start teaching. And especially because we said that teaching always contains some element of preaching. Lo chicham. Lo chicham is to preach to them, to castigate them. The first reason is because a person should never get up and castigate others until he's done the same for himself. That's called kshot atzmecha v'achakach kshot achrim. First, castigate yourself. First, criticize yourself. See what needs correction in yourself. And only then should you, if you are now in a state, not of having fixed it, you can't fix it. You can't fix everything, even in yourself you can't fix it. But you're in a state of lowliness, is what we call it, shiftless. If you're in lowliness, then you can say something to someone else. But if you're in a state of feeling that you are prim and proper and everything's right with you, anything you say will first of all, be hurtful and not be taken the right way. And secondly, will not be true. Because from a state of feeling pride about yourself, self-pride, you can't see the other person at all. He says, but the real reason, the second reason is even more important, don't start a war with the other side. The other side here means the impurity in the world. The sitracha. Don't start a war with it that is unnecessary. In other words, what does it mean to fight the evil? We don't fight the evil. Well, there's like Amalek that's evil that we just wipe out because it's evil. But most of the evil in the world, 99.9%, is not seen in Torah as evil per se. It's seen as something that has an exterior, a shell, an exterior that is negative, but inside there is a fruit. There's something that needs to be taken out. That's called lotzia kal mizulel, to take out the precious out of the shell. There's something precious inside. Hainu lotzia mibchinat shekenegdo nikra zolel, and that's really why you're talking to the people. You're not trying to tell them you're behaving improperly. That's not the point. The point is to get them to look at themselves and to see the good points in themselves. That's what you're really trying to get to convince them that this behavior or this conduct or these theories that you have or whatever it is, this is an exterior shell to who you really are. That's the real point of teaching. That's the real point of preaching also. It's to strengthen the positive in the person. And that you can't start that war You can't start a birur, it's called, a clarification like that, unless you're invited to. Like he now says, like a prophet. The prophet was invited because God told him, this is where you need to go. And you too need to go where the war is possible, where this battle is possible, where something will come out of it. It won't just be an act of, futile yelling at people and telling them, because even if you are going to say something constructive and positive, there's a time and a place for it. And if you don't know, then you're just wasting your breath. Okay.